Hey guys, today I wanted to talk about 3 missing persons cases out of Georgia. And the first one is Joshua Scott Adams, and he's been missing since May of 2013 from Jefferson, Georgia. And when he went missing, he was 25 years old. So he has a history of drug abuse, but when he went missing, he had just completed 6 weeks sobriety at a drug rehab program in Michigan. So he was last seen after he left home driving his white Chevy Malibu. And later that day, he cashed a check that he had stolen from his parents for $400. So the same day he was last seen, his car was found in a pasture next to a pond on his family's land. But he went fishing there, so it's not unusual for him to be there. But in his car, they found his cell phone, wallet, identification, and $25 cash. So later on that month, they found his shoes were actually on the banks of that same pond. But they've searched the area and even drained the pond, and they haven't found him. There's no record of him, but you know how they always overlook things when they search those ponds and lakes. So maybe the YouTube channel that searches for people could maybe look for this guy in this pond. But they said he called 2 people the day he disappeared. One guy he called 5 times, but that guy denies speaking to him. And then the other guy admitted to talking to him, but wouldn't tell the police what they talked about. So his family seems to think maybe he came in town, cashed that stolen check, and started doing drugs again, because he came from a rehab. So it could be that the 2 people he called were actually like drug dealers or friends he had that were in that scene where he was trying to get more drugs. And so my first thought on this case is that he's in the pond, and possibly he went there on his own because he was on drugs. But he's still missing, and even if he did drugs and stole the check and all that, his family deserves closure, and we would like to know what happened to Joshua Scott Adams. So the next case out of Georgia is Raymond Paul Akins, and he is missing from Columbus, Georgia. He was 32 when he went missing, and he also went missing in 2013, in January. So he was last seen on January 7th. So on New Year's Day, he left his sister's home to visit his girlfriend in Buena Vista, Georgia. His girlfriend's stepfather said that he gave Akins a ride back to Columbus on January 7th and said he dropped him off near his residence at Elon subdivision. But he was never heard from again. So, I mean, I highly doubt this stepfather would drop him off and that this guy would just leave on foot. I don't know. But he left his wallet and most of his belongings behind. His cell phone went missing with him but was never found. And the last known communication from the phone took place in the county that his girlfriend lived. And he didn't have a vehicle at the time he disappeared. That is why his girlfriend's stepfather had to give him a ride. So I always, give my opinion on what I think happened. And, we have limited information here, but I kind of feel like his girlfriend's stepfather might have had something to do with it. Maybe his girlfriend and him got into a fight, and the stepfather murdered him, possibly. And he thought he would just say he dropped him off, but he never made it there. And for his cell phone to have the last call be at the girlfriend's, that kind of makes you think that he never was brought back home. So hopefully somebody out there knows what happened to Raymond Paul Akins. His life matters, we need justice for him. We need to find him. So the third missing persons case out of Georgia that I wanted to talk about is actually the disappearance of twins. So they disappeared together, and they are Dannette Latanya Millbrook and Jeannette Latrice Millbrook, and they're from Augusta, Georgia, and they disappeared on March 18th, 1990. So this is a long time ago. So they were just 15 years old when they disappeared. They were last seen at a gas station. So on March 18th, 1990, Dannette and Jeannette Millbrook walked to the local church's chicken for lunch. When they returned, they told their mother that a man in a van had followed them for part of their walk. Well, later that day, the twins walked to their godfather's house because he wanted to give them money because they were going to be taking the city bus to school the following week because they had just moved to a new apartment and it was further from their school. So, the godfathers are always there to hand out the money. So they got $20 for the bus, and he gave them extra for snacks. So on their way home, they went to their cousin's house and talked to the cousin for a while. And when they were getting ready to leave, they asked if the cousin would walk home with them. But her mother said no because it was dark. So then they made a stop at their older sister's house on their way home. And they were there 15 minutes, and they asked the older sister to walk home with them. But she said no because she had a newborn. So in retrospect, the family members think it is odd that the girls were trying to get somebody to walk home with them. But when you think about it, if they had been followed earlier that day, and it was dark outside. They probably were scared to go home alone. They probably think this creepy guy in a van is just waiting for them, you know? So they walked on to the local gas station because remember they had money for snacks. They bought chips, candy, and soda. The clerk that worked there had seen them before and she knew who they were. She said there was nothing out of the ordinary about their behavior, and she is the last person to have seen Dannette and Jeannette. So at the time of their disappearance, one was 5'4" and one was 5'6". They were both enrolled in high school and were known to be good teens and not troublemakers. They did not have a history of running away, and there's no motive for their disappearance. And they don't have a history of misbehavior. So, my first thought, because I always like to give my theory, is the creepy guy in the van kidnapped them. And goodness knows what happened after that, you know. But you do hear of the cases where people are kept hostage, so they could still be alive, like being kept hostage by this creepy guy in the van. Now, since Gloria, who was the clerk at the store, she was the last person to see them. So she could be a suspect, you know. We have to keep all options open. But I personally don't believe that she had anything to do with it because it would be her against two teenagers who are like probably the same size as her. So I can't really see that being like what happened. And of course you would think, oh, the godfather or the sister or the cousin, but they were seen after visiting with all three of those people. So I feel like it was the creepy guy in the van. And unfortunately, because it was 1990, there probably weren't as many cameras around to be able to like pick up pictures of this guy. And of course there is a scenario where like the godfather gets in his car and sees them walking and says, you know, I was worried about you girls, so I'll give you a ride home. And of course they willingly go in his car because he's their godfather. And maybe he had something to do with their disappearance. Because the creepy guy in the van, I feel like he would have to have accomplices because it seems like it'd be really hard to kidnap two people from just the street. And that guy might have had more than one person in his van. But I think it's so sad because, let's see, they would be 48 if they were still alive. They've been missing for 32 years and 6 months. Well, I just wanted to bring awareness to these Georgia cases, and I'll see you in the next one.
I know you told your friend you're not okay, and tell me what's wrong and why you never said you felt that way. And guess you're trying to stay strong and fake a smile until I look away. But I've known you too long, it hurts to watch your blue eyes fade to gray as you fade away, as you fade away.